We have today two Olympians to share with us their stories and their thoughts on the future of our athletic community. And I think many of you have already interacted with many of them, with both of them. Mark Tewksbury, as we all know, is one of Canada's most recognized and accomplished Olympians. Highlights from, and besides being a fabulous dancer last night, by the way, awake and with the voice, yeah. Highlights from his 16-year athletic career include 3 Olympic medals, 7 world records, and an induction to the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame. And Mark is currently the honorary co-president and board member of Montreal 2006, the 7th historic Gay Games. And along with him, we have Holly Metcalf, who has been involved with rowing as an athlete and a coach for over 22 years. As an athlete, Holly has been a 6-time National Olympic team member, bringing home the Olympic gold in 1984, as well as 3 silver and 1 bronze World Championships medals between 1981 and 1997. Quite a feat. Besides running her foundation Row as One, she is currently writing a book about rowing, being a female athlete, and how keeping a journal since age 16 has helped her achieve her Olympic victory in 1984. Please give me a very large applause welcoming Holly Metcalf and Mark Tewksbury.
Thank you. It's been an amazing weekend, and very appropriately, I think, Mark and I have entitled our stories today called Turning Points. And major turning point is happening right now, that I have led you into a trap. I am going to this is my first time publicly speaking about my sexuality. And I felt this was a great place for me to be. And I just want to thank you for being here for me. Okay, goodbye. That was enough. So why now? It's not that I haven't been out. It's just that those years, in my younger years, of being so afraid and really just wanting to be myself, and really, absolutely the bottom line, afraid of being left alone. That's the bottom line. I have been very out lately. I have a 3-year-old daughter now, and I had to be out. When I got pregnant, I almost died in giving birth, and my partner was able to be there with me, and she was running back and forth between, we got Liza out. I had what's called eclampsia. So my whole system started to shut down and treat the baby as if it was a foreign object. And it happened very quickly. And I had to have, go into an emergency room. And eventually they had to do a C-section after 8 hours. And my partner finally said, she has one of the highest pain thresholds I know of. You need to do something now. I don't even remember anything. I just remember being curled up in a ball and just knowing she was there, and grateful that we could be there together. So Liza came out, 4 pounds, very healthy. My partner is running back and forth between Liza running in, 1, 2, 3, breathe, and then running back to me, and I guess I just wasn't coming back, wasn't coming out of it. And she would touch base with the nurse there, whose job it was to make sure that I kept breathing. And I made it, clearly. But what I remember is that nurse came to me the next day, and it was her day off, and she said, I felt so close to you that I needed to come be with you. And she knew I was gay. She felt so close to me without a conversation, just me lying there. That was such a key turning point for me. And being in that hospital and having every single person there totally respect my partner and myself and Liza. So I have been out, but not in my own community. I'm floored by everything I've heard here. I'm so removed. I'm so clueless about all the different movements that are going on. But the strength now that I have, I want to be a part of it. I have the strength now. And one of the pieces of strength comes from Liza. Can you remember all the playgrounds or seen all the playgrounds these days with all the things they have for kids? It's amazing. And I look at Liza, who at 3 comes up to here. Huge. I don't know. Who knows? Well, she does tackle her classmate after school with her Dorothy red sparkly shoes on and her long gown. She might. But Liza has brought back intense memories, and here's the memory. Of being alone, mostly. Had a very depressed mom. She went through a divorce when I was about 3. She was 23 by the time she had the 3 of us. And I spent all my time outside. And we had this wonderful old jungle gym in the back, wood, dark green, painted dark green. And I climbed up the ladders. I was about 3 or 4, and just that pure joy of sticking your hand out and letting your weight go and feeling that strength and going to the next and going and going and going across. And I got about halfway across, and that was it. There was nothing left. So I just hung there and, of course, started screaming and kicking my legs. And there was nobody there, except suddenly, with my eyes tight shut, I felt myself suspended. And I was being held. Somebody had come and gotten me. And I was so sure I was going to wrap my arms around my mom's neck and just be so happy. And I opened my eyes, and it was a lady next door. My mom couldn't be there. And this is a purely physical experience, this wonderful experience of pure strength and pride in having strength to get where I got to. But it suddenly was crystallized forever that my association with power would be with failure. My strength failed. And nobody's going to hold me up but myself. So that jungle bar taught me a lot about having strength, that I needed to have strength, but I still questioned it. And 3.5 years old, I don't know how many other kids could have made it that far, but it didn't matter. I didn't know that. The meaning crystallized was directly related to my mom. So there begins the turning point for me, which turned into, I do have this power. As I got older, every single adult around me said, you are an amazing athlete. It's just too bad you're born female. And that began the journey and the confusion. What does that mean?
Hi. We've decided to do it differently today. We're going to go back and forth. So just to sort of give you guys a new format. Fun, huh? Keep you awake on Sunday? We're trying something new. If it's a disaster, oh well. You know, we tried. Sorry, Mac. Wanted to leave on a big high. Oops. I'm also equally amazed and delighted to be here this weekend. You know, last night watching Rob up at the podium breaking down into tears, wasn't that just so moving and emotional? And I understand where it comes from. Because when you stand up here and you look, and there's all of you, all of us here together, something really strikes me. And that is that I think that most of us have a shared experience from our lives. And that is that at one point in our lives, some of us maybe a very long time ago, maybe some of us of a new generation, that experience isn't so strong. But I think that each of us shared a time in our lives where we felt a certain way, and it was different from everybody else. And we felt like we were alone and isolated and the only people in the world who were like this. And it's just incredible to me to see these rooms filled with people like me, people like each other, that we have this huge family here. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada, which was the breeding ground of the right-wing Conservative Party in Canada, the Reform Party. Yeehaw! And it's ultra conservative in Calgary, really, you know, family values of exclusion and hatred and intolerance. And it was there was no question. It was a complex childhood because I was different. And I didn't know I was different right away. You know, I didn't know that little boys aren't supposed to really adore Barbie and play with her in the bathtub. I didn't know little boys aren't supposed to try on their grandmother's lipstick and clip-on earrings just for the fun of it. I got the drag over early in my life. It's not there anymore. But, you know, nobody around me, and certainly myself included, I didn't have the words to describe it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't have any vocabulary at all until grade 7. When I was in junior high school, I started to get introduced to sort of team sports and things like football and volleyball. And unfortunately, whenever a flying object came at me, I tended to do the Nelliest scream, like, ah! And, you know, everyone around me would sort of go, oh my God, what is this little thing? And I was really lucky because I befriended the quarterback of the junior high football team. And he was so cute. He was like a little Clark Kent with glasses. He didn't know how cute he was. And I was just following him around. And slowly over time, you know, he tried to teach me to throw and to catch. And he was really sweet. He kind of took me under his wing. But the more time we spent together, and there were sort of 3 of us that spent a lot of time together, the more intense my feelings of friendship became, until I kind of became the best friend from hell. Because, you know, to get to Gary, you had to go through me. Because I was monitoring his time and his schedule, and, you know, I was just totally obsessed with this guy. Woo! Glenn Close! But I remember one day, it was Halloween, and the 3 of us had gone out dressed up as the 3 Musketeers. And at the end of the night, we went back to Gary's house and had a sleepover. And we were sleeping in the basement, and we were talking late into the night with our sugar high from all the candy. And I don't know, slowly, I guess we all sort of fell asleep, and we were on sleeping bags, and there was a fire going. It was just so beautiful. And I woke up at around 2:30 in the morning, and there, by the glow of the fire, was Gary lying in his underwear on his sleeping bag. And I don't know what possessed me, but I tiptoed over, and he was lying like that, and he was the first one of us to have underarm hair. And I just couldn't believe how beautiful that was. And I sort of crept over and was like that far away from him and kind of just wanted to snuggle into it, very harmless and innocent. And I remember just kind of being there and opening my eyes and locking them with Gary because he had woken up. And he did this and rolled over as if nothing had happened. and I had his back to me. And I realized, oh my God, I am so busted. Slowly, I started to realize that my access to the inner sanctum of this friendship was disappearing quickly. The repercussions didn't happen immediately. But about 3 weeks later, I went to school and I opened my locker. And there on my duotang, when I opened the locker, was written the word fag. F-A-G. The difference that was inside of me at that point in my life, I hated it. I hated it. I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to fit in. And that fag written on the duotang gave me an outlet to express that anger. And I didn't write just fag. I wrote gay boy, fag, in the biggest black marker you could find, all over my locker, all over the duotangs, all over the binders. And I left that school and never wanted to go back. My parents got called in with me to the principal's office, obviously. And the most amazing thing was we decided that it would be best if I changed schools, and I sort of got out of that circumstance. But when we went home that day, my parents never actually sat down and said, "Are you gay? What's going on here?" It was like it never happened. We just pretended it didn't happen. And in that moment was a turning point for me. It cemented for me that this was something that I will never, ever speak about. It must remain hidden at all costs.
What rowing became for me was that voice, the words that Mark couldn't find. It came in the form, a physical form. Finally, I think it's no mistake, going on that horizontal across the jungle gym, the rowing would become the place that I would pick. It's horizontal, but you're held. You have your own space within that 60-foot piece of fiberglass. You are your own person, but you've got to figure out how to blend that power, mentally and physically. So that became my voice. And that occasional bit of, I am absolutely sure I am strong enough to do something, came back. There are a couple of people on my team who had rowed in high school who said, "You have an amazing level of physical strength. I think you might want to look into national team." Yeah, I was incredibly quiet. So that, go find out how to do it was a big task. But I did make some calls and found out there was a process I had to become a part of, which was coming here to Boston, to Weld Boathouse, a Radcliffe women's boathouse. My coach and I drove here in his maroon Rambler with the broken back windows, and Bert was not one of many words, and nor was I, so it was a pretty fun ride. And we got to Radcliffe, and I opened the front door. It was a physiological testing at the time done on bikes. The bike test until you puke kind of thing. Plus what's called bench pulls. So I walked into the front hall to this crashing metallic sound. And as I walked up the stairs, I ran into these three women, with two holding up another woman, and she was dragging her feet along, and they're saying, "Come on, you can do it, it's okay, you can keep walking, it's all right, just keep moving, don't stop." And then Chris Korzanowski, who was the Olympic and women's national team coach of the time, just standing alone with a big space around him. And I walked up to him, and, he just kind of gave me this side look. And he said, "Yes, who are you?" and I said, I'm Holly Metcalf. How much do you weigh? 175 pounds. How tall? 5'8". Get off my bike. You know, you will not test. Because first I came from Mount Holyoke College. It was a club sport there. I had nothing to show for myself. In the 70s, this women's rowing was really just starting to pick up. And so that was my moment of, okay, this is the Olympic coach. And I walked down the stairs and I, my quiet way thought, am I not strong enough? How does he know that? How does he know that? And again, some little gut thing that I occasionally have said, you are strong enough. That's bullshit. And you're going to have to figure out what to do. And you better get your act together and go. Yes, we can hear you. I told you, Eli. You're in trouble. So I did pursue it. I made my first team in 1981. His challenge was the best challenge I could ever have had. I made that team. We were in the, what do we call ourselves? We were the little rinky-dink boat. We were not the priority boat. And we got a bronze medal. And Chris came over and said, so, Miss Mount Holyoke. I don't think he ever called me Holly. He said, this is not like racing Smith, is it? And it was great. I said, no, it is like racing Smith, and left. And from then on, I was able to make the teams in spite of him. And that was a huge, huge turning point for me. And then the sexuality became more of an issue again, of hiding it once I was on those teams year after year, wondering if people thought I was good enough to compensate for that sickness. And that turned around. The first time I realized that I did have someone to talk to, unlike Mark, was in 1984, the opening ceremonies. Thousands of people. They saved the U.S. team for last. You walk in, and the sound, I can't describe it. Your skin just comes off. It feels like it's off and floating away. And thousands of people and thousands of us as athletes on the field. And out of nowhere, my mom came down to the side and hugged me and held me. And I realized, my God, she couldn't be there then. She is now. And I was able to take in a lot. I mean, there was a lot of neglect. I was a neglected child, but not because of any purposeful reason. It just was that way. And now she's here. So in 1983, I was able to talk to her and to tell her about a relationship I was in. And it was the first time I'd ever come out to her. And it made the most amazing difference. I was very lucky. She knew my psyche so well. So it wasn't so much the sexuality that we spent the time on. We got through that. And then she really helped me think about this person that was not a good person for me. Those two moments of, here's the person, she can hold me now. She's there. And I didn't think she was, but she is. And those moments of strength that come when you least expect them. Yeah.
Okay, good. You're so subtle at your cues. You just wait. I'm like, is that my cue? So, listen, after the little underarm incident, school became kind of hell. You know, I thought that I could run away from it from going to a new school, But, the teenage hotline is a pretty intense one, and it only took about 3 days before I was at the new school, and a guy came and said, "Hey, aren't you the fag from St. Cyril?" It's like, yeah, oh boy. And really, the rest of my school life was just not something that I ever looked forward to. It was living hell through junior high and high school. But I had an outlet. The great irony was that my safe place became sport. And sport is not necessarily a safe place for a homosexual person. But for me, it was the place where I could thrive. And certainly, because I felt so much less than in a certain environment, I needed to feel at least a part of somewhere else. And that's what sport was for me. But of course, it was hide at all costs, no question, because I saw the devastation of what happens if people find out. And if I lost this too, it was just going to be unbearable. Now, I've learned a really incredible lesson in life, and that is that people obviously see what they want to see. Because you would have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to see that I was a little homosexual. Even at 14, 15, it was just really clear. But I realized because I was good, I was a good swimmer, that excellence is a great deterrent to prejudice and discrimination. That people allowed me just to be there because in a way they wanted to be like me. I think I kind of confused them. They wanted to swim like me, but they weren't quite sure they wanted to be totally like me. Because I always led the cheers and did the really kind of gay boy things, I'll never forget, even, that carried on through right to the end of my swimming days. When I first made the national team, I was in a room with all my heroes, some of our Olympic champions and world record holders, and I was a rookie. And the team coach had just had this really boring speech trying to get us psyched up for a competition. And he said, "Does anybody have anything to add?" And I shot up my hand, and he was like, "Okay, come on up, rookie." And all my teammates from Calgary were like, "Don't do this, please." And I ignored them, and I got in front of the group, and I went, "I'm a beaver, you're a beaver, beavers we are all. And when we get together, we do the beaver call." It's true. Well, they didn't know quite what to do with me. You okay? A turning point in my swimming career came at the 1991 World Championships. About 18 months before the Olympics, I swam the 100-meter backstroke final. And the world record holder at that time was a swimmer from the U.S. His name was Jeff Rouse. And, he was kind of a god to me. He was 6'4" and from Stanford. And just, there's no way I could ever beat Jeff, But maybe I could win a silver medal if I did everything right. And I remember Jeff was in lane 4 for the final. I was in lane 5. And the best swimmer from Russia was in lane 6. And halfway through the 100-meter backstroke, which is 2 lengths, I couldn't see Jeff at all because in backstroke you can only see if you're leading. If you're behind, you can't see the people. But I could see the Russian, down at my chest, and I was thinking, "Oh yeah, stay there, Russian, stay there. I can win a silver medal, woo!" And then I remember about 25 meters left in the race, I saw out of the corner of my eye that as my right hand came out of the water, it was exactly even with the swimmer beside me, who was Jeff Rouse. And I was like, oh my God, relax. You could win, relax. Sort of freaking out. And we stayed stroke for stroke, and at the end, Jeff won the race, but I was 6/100ths of a second behind in silver. So a year and a half before the Olympics, 6/100ths of a second behind the best guy in the world. And it looks like, wow, if I keep going, I've really got a chance here. Jeff and I had one rematch before the Olympics. It took place about 10 months before Barcelona in Canada, in Edmonton, Alberta. And all my family came up, and everyone was very excited, hometown advantage, all that stuff. And my strategy was simple. I was going to do the same thing as the World Championships, but when I caught him at the 75-meter mark, I wasn't going to freak out this time. I was going to stay focused and out-touch him and, go into the Olympic year ranked number 1. Well, in the race, first 50 meters, I couldn't see him. No problem, Wait till I get to that 75-meter mark. Did a flip turn, 60 meters, 70 meters, 75 meters, I can't see him. 85 meters, I can't see him. 95 meters, I'm like, where the hell is he? And the crowd is already going, wow. And I knew they weren't cheering for me. I hit the wall, looked up to the scoreboard, found my name, and it said, Tewksbury Mark, 55.29, number 2. I did exactly the same result as I had done at the World Championship. Above my name, it said, Jeff Rouse, USA, 53.93. And I'll never forget, the scoreboard cleared and it went, new world record. New world record. It's just like, and in less than a minute, I suddenly was no longer 6/100ths of a second behind the best guy in the world. I was 1.2 seconds. To put that in perspective, over 7 years on the national team, swimming, 4 or 5 hours a day, I improved 1 or 2 tenths a year, which was incredible. I now had to make that same 7 years improvement in 10 months if I wanted to win the Olympics. And most people thought it was impossible, and it was over, myself included at the first. I had a little pity party in my hotel room. Pity that minibar. Anyway. But, once I kind of came around, little did I know it would be the beginning of the biggest turning point, or one of the biggest turning points in my life. And here is why. I was so desperate to do everything possible to find that 1.2 seconds that I started to sort of ask for help and go to places that I never would have done before to try to improve my swimming. And one of the things was my underwater work was really weak, and the world champions in synchronized swimming were in Calgary. And I went to their coach, Debbie Muir, and asked if she would coach me. And in doing that, started to build a relationship with this incredible woman. We started to become friends. And about 4 months into it, for whatever reason, I guess I felt I felt I was safe. For the first time in my life, other than my parents and that teacher and that principal, I went to somebody in a position of authority, and I took the chance. And I said to her, I'm gay. And she cried and she hugged me and she didn't reject me, which was what I was completely afraid of. And I found this little tiny space in my life where I could be myself. And I started to fill that space more and more and more until I got to the Olympics. And I became a different person. I transformed. When I was in the ready room before the race, we marshal 30 minutes before we go out and actually swim, and it's called the ready room. We sit there, 4 walls, a door, 8 chairs, and you sit with your 7 competitors and stare at each other and jump around, and it's so intense. And I remember looking at these guys from Russia and the United States and Spain and all over the world and thinking, we've all trained 6 hours a day. We've all done this, the work to get here. What makes me different? And for the first time in my life, I thought to myself, I'm gay. And if these fuckers knew how hard it was to get here, they wouldn't believe it. And it became the most incredible source of strength instead of a source of shame and weakness. I went out there, I dropped 1.2 seconds off my personal best, came from behind, and won the race by 6/100ths of a second. And I found my voice. Thank you.
Well, we know that's incredible. I don't know how you did it. I know I have that sense of timing. In rowing, it's not quite as tight. Half a second is a lot. That's amazing. I think, like Mark, finally not feeling like I was a victim. It took a long time before I started treating myself as an entire person. And when that finally happened, it was a very difficult time. After my career in '87 was my last year. I wanted '88 to be my last year, but I had 2 back surgeries. That was that. I ended up coaching the national team in 1990, and we got a silver medal. And my team was amazing. They were very slow at first, and I'm a technician. I'm a really good technical coach, and was able to really help them find that confidence and find those seconds and their efficiency. They were going up against the Romanian women, the Russian women, who were averaging 6 feet, 200 pounds. They're about 5'10", 155. So we looked pretty tiny next to that group. But I coached that team, and I hated the politics. I have this mantra of win from within, not at all costs. It just is the way it works for me. The long-term benefits have been extraordinary. I don't care about humiliating the shit out of people to make them go fast. I don't do it. I just... But, it's not my way, and it's not many other rowing coaches' way, but there are also pretty balanced amount of humiliation being used. And I left because I felt this pressure to make myself more important than the athletes, that they should reflect me. And I knew I had to leave if I was buying into that, and I did. And I joined a group called Project Teamwork. It's run through the Center for the Study of Sport and Society at Northeastern, and stood up usually in front of crowds of about 500 to 2,000 high school students at a time, with Louis Tiant, Norm Van Leer, Lynn Dawson, all these professional athletes, to talk about racism, to talk about gender difference. Oh, but not to talk about being a lesbian. No way. But in having to stand up and begin to pick stories out and share them and link them with my fellow teammates was the beginning. From that experience of being seen and heard and having to use a voice, I thought, my God, what if I could use rowing to help people who have never experienced trust in their lives? And I was thinking youth at the time, and eventually went to school. Being the doubting Thomas that I was, felt I needed a degree to prove that I could do this, and got a master's at Harvard and formed an inner city program for girls here in Boston. And then came, even before that, was the formation of programs for older women, because I now was not competing, and what I was basically being told was, put your toys away, you're done. Do not bring any of this rowing talk into your work. Leave it. And I was looking at all the older women who were coming into the sport, nobody taking them seriously. So I decided I'm going to create Row as One, and I'm going to have programs for masters, men and women. I'm going to coach inner city girls. And from that came a breast cancer survivor program. It's amazing when you know your passion and are willing to share it and teach it. So what I do now is I create learning environments. I don't know what else to call them, where you can learn at your own rate. I'm going to be your witness. And that's, I think, the greatest strength that I have gotten from coming out is giving to anybody else my eyes to reflect them back. And they know I am going to find the strengths, and I'm going to reflect them back. And that's what I practice every day through something as simple as rowing, is reflecting back the power I see. And I look for it. And that's that's where I've found my voice too, in teaching, in reflecting. And I have to thank you, because you allowed me that witnessing today. And I knew I shouldn't be afraid. Well, what better group to come out to? If I can't do it here, I'm in big trouble. But I appreciate what the conference has done. It's been a witnessing of us all.
So I had found this little place in my life where I found my voice with a particular person. But the challenge then was to integrate that into the bigger picture of life, which is maybe some of the things we're talking about at this conference, about how do we take this pocket of strength and help to bring that to the world, to integrate it for other people out there. I had promised myself that the life that I had been denying, the life, my private life that I'd put on hold, would finally start to happen after I went to the Olympics. I didn't know that I would win the Olympics. I didn't foresee what would happen at those Olympics. In Canada, we don't win so many medals. We won about 8 in Barcelona in total. Only about 3 gold medals. I was one of only 2 individual gold medals, and I happened to win the first one. If you remember, in Canada in 1988, we had Ben Johnson win the first gold medal. So our country was starving for a boy-girl next door. Little did they know they got both. A boy next door to sort of hang their hopes on and believe in this thing again. And I became that poster boy. And I had no idea what was happening. It was like a train took off. My life went here, but I didn't go with it. I fragmented. Parts of myself were all over the place. I was on the cover of Time magazine. I was doing beef commercials. I had a line of clothing at Sears. I had a book deal. I know, wicked, woo! I had a book deal. I mean, it was just go, go, go. And I didn't know how to stop this thing. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified and scared, and every clause had a public disdain. If I do something that brings public disdain against this company, I will be sued. I will have to pay the money back. I will have to... And how do you stop this? How do you say, wait a minute, I'm not what you think I am entirely? And I felt like a fraud. I decided in November, after the Olympics in 1992, I had to do something. And I came up with a plan. First, tell my parents. Second, tell my agent at IMG, International Management Group. And third, tell the public. Come clean. I can't stand living this lie anymore. So I drove to my parents. And, you know, at that time, every time I came over, it was like, oh, what's exciting thing happening now? My mom was all giddy with all this excitement. And I said, oh, sit down, and they're like, okay, and they could sense there was some seriousness here. And my parents are both Reform Party members. They are rednecks. They've come a long way, but they're rednecks. God bless them. I love them for who they are, but that's just where they come from. And I'll never forget saying the words, trying to find the words. So simple. I'm gay. But and the anticipation on their faces, like, I was like, oh shit. And finally, I'm gay. And it was like gay went, gay, gay, gay. Sort of hit them both in the face at the same and instant tears. And the first thing my mother said is, what are my friends going to think? I went out to my car and thought to myself, gee, that went well. Abort plan, abort plan. I'm not going to tell anybody else after this bloody thing. And that message of don't speak again got reinforced. And unfortunately, I bought into it. I didn't speak. I ran. I compromised. I allowed people to turn this fundamental part of my being into a liability. I even was recruited to become the next member for Canada of the International Olympic Committee. And I told the woman who handpicked me and was grooming me for this job that I was gay. And she said, it's absolutely fine as long as you never, ever, ever talk about it. And I didn't for a couple of years. But finally, enough was enough. When that very woman used it as a liability against me. And when a gay man in a corporation used it as a liability against me, the only time I was discriminated against that I knew openly was by another gay person in a corporate environment who felt completely threatened because I dyed my hair blonde. And I was a big screaming queen, let's face it. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Anyway, so in 1998, I decided enough was enough. And I came out. I came out very publicly in Canada. And, it was incredible, the hypocrisy. The gay press crucified me. We knew what took you so long, and they, wanted me to come out. And when I did, I was the bad guy. The straight press, who cares? We don't care what you do in the bedroom. Your sexuality is not an issue. There were 96 calls for an interview by 10 a.m. Who cares? Why are you calling? Drove me nuts. But I realized, I thought that in coming out and finding that voice, that it was the end of something, that there would be this sort of euphoria, and that there would be a utopia, and everything would fall into place. What I didn't understand, that would begin a lifelong process and journey of coming out. Because every single day, as an invisible minority, I have the choice in situations. From last night, getting in a cab, and the guy goes, oh, you find any chicks tonight? No, you're having a good time? I said, if only they knew what the lesbians did to me at that bar, he would have died. But anyway, not the kind of chicks he was thinking about. But, and I've got a choice. Do I tell this guy or not? Do I disclose it or not? And that's constantly ongoing. And for me, at 35 years old, I'm finally coming to a place where it's integrated. And I have the gay sport movement to thank for that. Because I left sport entirely after the IOC experience and other things, and really thought that was it. That sport, there was no place for me ever in my life. I just didn't fit that world. I was asked to be part of Montreal's bid team for the Gay Games for 2006. And I didn't know anything about the Gay Games at that time. I'm sorry to say, I just didn't. I didn't know very much about it. But when I learned about it, I really liked it. The values of inclusion, participation, and personal best really resonated with me. And they resonate even more having been to Sydney and seeing my first games. And realizing truly that is the spirit of what the Olympics is supposed to be about. Some people do have that experience at the Olympics, but many people end up very disappointed and broken souls. Oh, I know who that is. Gumby. Anyway, when you come home, a lot of people, you say, you went to the Olympics, and people say, did you win a medal? And you say, no, I came 18th. Oh, that's not very good. Really, that's the reality. That's sort of, it's all about the medal. It's sort of all about the winning. And for me, there was really a place in the Gay Games. But what I found even more, that, I speak for a living. I speak to corporations. And I've always wanted to integrate my full self into my life, to really be a leader in my own life. But I never found a place for that. But starting 3 months ago, I thought, what the hell? I'm going to speak about the Gay Games in my corporate presentations. And it was a little shocking for people. They don't really hear the games. They just hear gay. I say I lose about half the audience. It's like, woo, smelling salt, come back, come back. But you know, it's a great business story. It's an interesting context to be able to speak about gay in a way that is a bridge that people can understand, and through sport, because I think it helps broaden not only the definition of who we are within our own community as gay and lesbian people, it also broadens the definition of what gay people are to the outside community. It's a middle ground where sport actually has a chance to do what sport can do best, which is to transcend boundaries and prejudices and bring people together. And I'm very, very proud to be part of the Gay Games movement. I think that this conference is an enormous turning point. It's the start of something. It's not the end, it's the beginning, hopefully, of that lifelong, ongoing process for many of us of how to take this message here, 400 strong, out into the world and start to integrate it into other areas, not just here in a place where it's easy to talk about gay and lesbian and transgendered and bisexual, but in other environments where it breaks new ground. I would love to share some of the learnings that I've gotten from this, from all the different speakers, but I would be here for the next day or 2 days. I've gotten so much. But, you know, I think of Pat Griffiths when she opened the conference on Friday night, sharing her hopes with us for the future. When she shared about the importance of gay and lesbian and transgender and bisexual people working together and not being fractured. It starts with us individually not being fractured, and then with our communities not being fractured and working together to make a difference. I also really appreciated that she included our straight friends in there, because we do not live in isolation and we cannot do this alone. It's one thing to talk about it here. I was in Chicago a couple of weeks ago at the biggest sponsorship conference in the world, wearing Gay Games Montreal 2006 on my badge in the middle of corporate America. It was quite an experience, ladies and gentlemen, really. But it's fun to do it. It's fun to do it. And some people respond incredibly well, and some people don't respond very well at all. But at least we give them the chance to respond by letting them know it's there. I think of Billy yesterday, Billy Bean, talking about the power of celebrity to make change happen, to make a difference. And in his case, being one of the only baseball players ever to come out. And that's very powerful. I think that to make change, we need some role models to take the risk, to take more risks, to put themselves out there. But I also really appreciated both Eric and Dave last night essentially talking about asking ourselves to think, to rethink, but also the power of one. That if every single one of us does our little bit, it creates a very powerful stream. And I know it's such a simple idea, but it's absolutely true. That's where it starts. And we must continue to speak about it. That's what my speech today was really about. I was told never to speak about it. And the only person that didn't benefit from that was me. And so now I have to keep speaking and speak and speak and speak. I just would like to finish with letting you know that as a Canadian, it's been really incredible to be here at the United States National Gay and Lesbian Conference for this past couple of days. We are interconnected in ways around the world that we can't even begin to fathom. We can't even begin to imagine. And I guess I challenge that as you build this incredible organization here in the United States, please keep in mind that we also need it internationally. We need to go beyond the borders of the United States because sport does that. The IOC is universal. They need to change their minds. International sporting federations are universal, and they need to change their minds. The Federation of Gay Games is universal. They're already an access point that is starting to connect with people around the globe about issues that we're talking about. Something that really stuck with me, that shifted my perspective when I started to come out, was how I looked at myself and the idea of being gay. And I leave you with this thought. I used to look at gay as shame and I just looked at it as different and not very good. But I've changed my mind entirely. To me, gay is G-A-Y, greatness awaits you when you have the power to live your truth and to be who you're supposed to be. Thank you.